Hello, so welcome everyone to the session on restoring communities after conflict. Um, let's start with the conflict outcomes. What can come out of conflict? What kind of outcomes can we have? First one is conflict management. Conflict management is basically a de escalation uh, or avoidance of future conflict. So, focuses on procedural responsibilities of the parties. So, basically, when we do conflict management, then we are actually trying to control the conflict and prevent it from escalating. However, when we do conflict resolution, then we are trying to address and respond to all major issues of contention and also roots of the conflict. And mind you, our field is called conflict resolution field. So it goes much deeper into intervention than conflict management. Conflict management is more about controlling and de escalating, while conflict resolution is about addressing all the major issues of contention. And we have another one, which is conflict transformation. Now, this is the most difficult one, and it takes time to work and implement it. Basically, it means transforming the relationships, interests, discourses, and if necessary, the very constitution of society. So, conflict transformation uh, usually happens in the aftermath of conflict or violence, when the relationships are broken, when um, parties distrust each other, when there is a need for reconciliation and social rebuilding, and changing structure and also even culture of the society, so that the society can move towards a more sustainable future. So this is important to say to figure out these three concepts before we talk about how we can restore communities in the aftermath of conflict. Okay, so now let's move into the trends in the last 30 years. We have seen a lot of conflicts around the world, and we have seen interventionism also uh, on the side from the side of the West. So, uh, what happened? What are the major events? There was the end of the Cold War in 1989. And with the end of the Cold War and disintegration of Soviet Union, of this Warsaw Bloc, we had the emergence of different conflicts around the world. Um, there was a conflict in Somalia, there was a conflict in former Yugoslavia, uh, and so on. After that, we had Western allies who plunged into Afghanistan, Iraq, and recently Syria. So there is this trend of interventionism, um, trying to, in a way, um, prevent conflict from escalating, which were sometimes more or less successful. And so these are basically the trends that are taking place in the last 30 years. Um, However, what we saw is that the conflicts where interveners, especially Western allies, came to and got involved, the finale of these conflicts is very slow, messy, and costly. So the involvement in conflict, whether to help, to or to do other thing, uh, can be very messy, can be very costly. It costs lives. It costs resources, and it can be very damaging for the local societies. So um, that's why, in the public in the West, people are unwilling to support such long, complicated, and costly endeavors that such as Iraq or Afghanistan, for example. Uh, Afghanistan has less than $1 billion revenue per year, but uh, there was $125 billion per year that was spent in Afghanistan in the aftermath of the conflict. So, what does such an influx of money mean? Well, it usually indicates corruption and waste. It can, but also you replace the priorities of Afghan government with micromanaging tendencies and priorities of foreigners, of the interveners, and not the local society. So, for example, development agencies um, and other actors are receiving a lot of money, and basically sometimes if even for the interveners, this influx of money is basically what their livelihoods are about. So it's in many people's interest to prolong this process of peace building. The United States entered Afghanistan and Iraq knowing what it wanted to eliminate. So Osama bin Laden sanctuary, Saddam Hussein regime, but US and its allies did not really have a clear concept of a strategy and end state. So in Iraq, the lack of post-conflict strategy was not an oversight but deliberate, because what the West, what the US wanted to do is just to go in and uh, fix the situation quickly, but it didn't count that on the fact that this cannot be a quick fix. That if you get involved in a conflict, that you have the responsibility to maintain peace and stability and to work towards peace and stability. So US didn't count that they will stay in Afghanistan, Iraq for a long time in order for the goals that they achieve to be sustainable. Um, so there is the lesson learned that there is a preeminence of political rather than military outcomes, and that if you are to intervene for peace in some country, you need to think about long-term strategy and goals. Um, Another lesson learned is that regime change is not the end of the war, only the end of the first phase. So, the desired end state, a government with perceived legitimacy that earns the support of a large section of the local population, is very difficult goal to achieve. And this is not only clear from the mixed results achieved in Iraq and Afghanistan, but also Libya and Syria. Second lesson, that there should be integrated civilian and military action. So this like civilian administration and military action should be integrated and coordinated much better. And this was not working very well in the last several decades. There was an effective partnership in Iraq between General Petraeus and Ambassador Ryan Crocker, but we all can remember the case when there was a disconnect between Paul Bremer, who is the administrator of the Coalition Provisional Authority of Iraq following the invasion. And basically, his ill-advised order regarding the disbanding of the Iraqi army and the de-Baathification of the government, uncoordinated steps that fueled, if not generated, insurgency, because through this Baathification process and disbanding of Iraqi army, you had like about 400,000 soldiers, Iraqi soldiers that were out of work all of a sudden. So, of course, this led to insurgency, and the general at that time really opposed such decision, but he was not listened to. So there should be a better coordination between civilian administrators, political administrators, and military leaders. Future interventions will involve not just soldiers and diplomats, but development experts in wide-ranging fields from agriculture, policing, justice, energy, commerce, conflict resolution, and so on. Because what is needed after the conflict is not just political and government stability, but also the development of economy and the capacity building in many sectors of the society. Given the emerging global media environment, the perceived legitimacy of any action depends on popular support. So time will be an important factor, and future interventions should involve better strategic planning. What else is a trend in the recent 30 years? That the world is becoming more multipolar. So you have different powers, superpowers that are arising. There is not anymore like a dichotomy or one power that is dominant. There are few of them now emerging. And there is also a rise of regional powers and regional organizations. So globalization, regionalization, and transnational movements and actors are becoming trends in the last few decades. These trends show the end of the era of international society dominated by sovereign nation states. Okay. So we have the rise of the importance of regions and their organizations, such as the EU and ASEAN, which have been growing. So ASEAN is important because it's the association of Southeast Asian nations, such as Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Brunei, and so on. These regional organizations are becoming important bodies, important actors on the international stage, and they are the bodies that are situated between the nation states and international society. And as such, these regional chunks of states they are becoming more powerful actors on the international stage, and they can actually be equal interlocutors to the superpowers such as China, such as the US, and others. Okay, so these are the nation states of ASEAN. So, as I said, international distribution of power is moving toward multipolarity, and by 2030, it is highly likely that China and potentially other developing countries will become major powers. Um, well, some scholars are saying that multipolarity is less likely to be conflictual because of the growth of international institutions and because of the economic interdependence of major powers. So, the overall vision for the near future is an optimistic one, but this optimism depends both on the actions of existing and new powers in the coming 20, 20 or so years. What do you think? Um, Especially now when the whole world is affected by COVID-19 and there this such great pandemic, such great global events will definitely have impacts um, on the distribution of power internationally, globally. Uh, Now, where do we see all powers coming together? Well, around climate change, some big global issues like climate change or more recently COVID-19. So new data was published by Science that if the planet warms by 2 degrees Celsius, sea levels will rise about 20 feet. And um, this is very likely to happen. And um, as we discussed earlier, 196 countries reached an agreement on how to lower these greenhouse gas emissions that are responsible for global warming. So, U.S. Pulled out of Paris Agreement 2015, but we'll see how, with a new administration, this whether U.S. will return to the Paris Agreement, definitely as one of the biggest polluters and um, emitters of the greenhouse gases. It would be crucial for the US to be part of this agreement and work together with other countries to fight global warming and climate change. Okay, there is also this tendency that conflicts, wars, will become long distance. That they will, that the future wars will be led by technological means and through drones or some kind of equipment, without mobilizing the American people, government, actually sending the troops somewhere. Um, so so this is important. The wars, the conflicts will also depend on public opinion. Now, in the time when we have social media and the internet, um, um, the action of the government are not as obscure and unknown as they were few like 100 years ago. Now everything is basically accessible. Information is circulating about everything. So public opinion will matter if countries decide to intervene somewhere or um, get involved in some kind of a conflict. There is also a tendency of moving away from military intervention and particularly large-scale intervention. So there, we can expect that in the future we would have more political actions that could, actually solve the problem rather than sending military forces somewhere. So let's hope this tendency will be correct. So moving towards more um, democratic means such as dialogue, diplomacy, negotiation, and so on. Also, what will be important to prevent future conflicts and to restore communities and restore societies that were affected by conflict in the past is we need to be we need to build local capacity and ownership at the communal level. So what does that entail? There needs to be a holistic approach to programming and training. So the need for more training that brings together key areas such as political empowerment, negotiation, leadership, as well as technical and vocational training. All of that will be important. Empowering civil society, developing the capacity of the civil society organizations to take ownership and hold actors accountable in the post transition period is critical. So, non-profit, non-governmental organizations are somehow a bridge between government and the populace, the people, and they are there also to keep the government in check, to monitor, to gather data, to gather testimonies, to work with victims and perpetrators, to promote democratic values and advocate for them, for human rights, and so on. So, this is very important, empowering civil society. And what we have learned from the recent conflicts is that the societies with weak or non-existent civil society or this non-profit sector, that these societies tend to have more propensity to conflict. Okay, so this is an important part of a democratic future democratic countries and stability in terms of peace and other issues. Also, making use of media and enhancing women's role in peace building will be important. So, media continues to dominate as a powerful messaging tool in the post conflict environment, engaging men and women in media, training on the important role women can play in peace building is a vital innovative tool. Women represent the connection between warring parties often. They serve also as a bridge through intermarriages, and symbolically they have power to give birth to children. They are often targets because of that very power that they possess. So women as peace builders really can serve as the bridge. So more women and also women can provide a special unique perspective on peace building strategies and how to build a more inclusive and stable society. So many rebuilding nations are rich in natural resources and um, they they um, but these societies can not only depend on the third parties, on the outside interveners to help. Of course, these outside interveners and let's say humanitarian development agencies need to be there at least in the beginning. But the main goal is for these organizations to empower the local people. So it's very important to involve communities in peace building, because peace building is taking place mainly at the communal level. What is important for peace building? It's not only building of the infrastructure and new institutions. Another important thing is that actually there needs to be a restoration of communities, of communal connections, of trust, of relationships. That was all of that was broken in the conflict. So these processes of reconciliation, of coming together to rebuild this new society, actually need to take place at the local level, among local communities. So strategies and programs need to really focus more on the local communities, and the programs that are brought by, let's say, international development agencies have to have that component of empowering the local communities to become self-sufficient and self-sustainable, and not dependent on the foreign aid and so on. So that's the goal, um, how to customize the programs that, for example, UN agency is providing in some area, how to customize it to that particular context, uh, so that people are empowered and can create a sustainable, let's say, sustainable income and some kind of a stability. And so this comes through ownership, through promoting local ownership of the peace building process. Okay, so this is it for now. I hope you enjoy the lecture and um, enjoy the holidays, and I wish you all the best until the next time. Have a good rest of the week.